introducing yourself?
Yep, so I'm Dan Higgins, owner of Lunchtime Studios and lead programmer. We're working on Lords of New York. We're on Kickstarter right now for about another 20 some days, and we're really excited about it. We have a very innovative new product. It's a 1920s adventure RPG set in New York City, so you play as one of three characters. A little bit like Boardwalk Empires meets Rounders. So these three characters, you can play as a mafia guy, Vincent. You can play as an undercover agent trying to bring down the mob, or you can play as Veronica, who's an undercover reporter trying to do stories on the mob. Now, it's a little bit like, so there's half the game is adventure, a little like the old Shadowrun video game where it's like half the world's in the real world, half is in the Matrix. You know, half is the Manhattan storyline, and half is in poker. So poker's your combat mechanic, but it's not just typical poker. So depending on who you play, for example, Vince, we give you special abilities to be awesome. So Vince though is not very awesome, but he can cheat, intimidate, things like that. So I've actually designed a special animation system, which is very new to the games, and would be really big for indie people. At some point I'll do a Kickstarter for that because people seem to love it. But basically with one piece of art, I can do almost infinite animation. So when you're playing poker, it's all about like seeing their expressions and seeing their tells, and you have tells also. So you have to spend your mana or your moxie in order to use either special abilities or to like hide your own tells. So if you're going to bid up the pot, you're going to start showing that you're lying. So you may spend some moxie to like for 3 rounds, you can make sure that you're not showing, but then they keep raising and calling, so now you're starting to show again. So that kind of thing. It's not necessarily like the card play is not like, hey, let me win some cards. It is, let me keep a guy at a table long enough so I can go down and like, you know, plan something in his apartment. So while you're playing, you're looking at his tells, you can tell that he's getting bored, he's getting frustrated, so you start losing money to him, you're losing weight, so it's a lot of strategy. And my background's in AAA games and strategic elements, so Empire Earth, Dawn of Wild World, for Empires, SimCity series, things like that. So, you know, I'm putting a lot of AI into the characters, so it's really less about playing the cards than it is the situation and the characters that you're there for. So, depending on who you are, he can cheat and intimidate. He's got probabilities and statistics, the government agent, and the undercover reporter is great. Her tech trade line, it's about intuition and people skills. So, it's a really big innovation step. You know, poker like no one's done before. I'm using my background really for AI, and since it's my own game engine in C++, I'm going to port it wherever the customers are. So right now, it's Mac, PC, iOS, but I'll eventually port it to OEI, Android. Nintendo seems really interested in it, things like that. So it's all about where people want it. It took me about a month to do a port, so I'm kind of waiting towards the end and then prioritize based on where the fans want it first. So, cool.
All right. So the game is set in 20s Prohibition era.
Yep.
How did you manage to? All right, so it's a relatively simple setting, but it's really popular.
Yes.
And everything. What got you from like the beginning? What was the beginning idea, and how did it develop?
Sure. So, I mean, first the 20s is one of these things where it's like I feel like I lived in the era, right? It's one of the most unique decades in our history. I mean, Prohibition spawned a whole bunch of changes that happened. So I love the history of the time, especially New York City. There's really no better place for the 20s in New York City. A lot of it is, so like for example, we had a lot of reference material. I grew up listening to The Shadow, which is like an old radio drama. That's kind of in the 30s, but it's right at the end of the 20s. But you get a feel for the era. You get a feel for, you know, what was like there. You know, Sing Sing, the electric chair, all that kind of stuff. You know, really good storytelling back then. I really love. There's a lot that happens with speakeasies. There's a lot of possibilities. A lot of like everyday people doing things that maybe were against the law, but really shouldn't have been against the law. So it's a little bit like a rebellious period. I really love that. But we did reference to like the Poisoner's Handbook, which is the study of forensic science in the 1920s, New York City. So there's like so much drama that happened there that people have no idea about that we're able to uncover. So like, you know, we're trying to incorporate realistic things, realistic locations. So you actually visit Bellevue Hospital, you actually visit locations in New York City that were authentic markers of the time. And so when the origin of this, it was 5 years ago, you know, online poker was really popular. So I saw my friend playing, he was playing 5 games at once. I'm like, isn't that boring? He's like, yeah, I'm just playing for money, you know. So he was so impersonal, right? And I was like, you know, why not? You know, I wish it was more exciting, you know. So I want to take the exciting moments of poker and make them accessible to people. So this is like, you know, people who may not know they like poker or like they think I don't like poker. this is about using like your special powers really to be awesome at poker, to use it as a battle mechanic. So it's not like I want to make it so this is a game that maybe people who don't like poker will love, and even people who like poker, it's a totally different aspect now. You can play with your difficulty level will make your mana less, so you have to play a little more straight up. So that kind of thing.
Alright. So you are doing like the AI encoding and such.
Yep.
Are you also part of the art team, or who else?
Yep.
Actually, rather, why don't we go with this? How big is your studio, and how were you formed?
So, you know, we're all part-timers, but a lot of us are from AAA games. So, I'm the owner, lead programmer, the only programmer, and art designer. So I do a lot of the story stuff. Our game designer, Starfix, is a real poker guy, so you know, he's making sure it's fun for poker players. And so my wife and I, you know, like love adventure games or inspiration from things like Grim Fandango, Monkey Island, things like that. And you know, and I love Metal Gear Solid type games. So when I play Metal Gear Solid, it changed the way I saw games. It's like I have to involve story and everything, no matter what the game is, and I have to put voice acting in. So for me, it's a whole lot of dialogue, a whole lot of voice acting, and a lot of story elements. So we have a producer, Joe. Beth is a really talented actual like graphic designer, which is special to games. It's a different talent to be able to say, I want to make it so people understand what the, you know, where the funds are, communicate. So it's usability is what the new field is called. And she's also a great artist. And we also have some people that we work with on SimCity and things like that who are doing the 3D scenes. Our animation guy, our animation director is Rick Bushy. So he's doing a lot of he can do everything, but a lot of times he's doing animation at the moment.
So, as a team, how many people?
So we have 7 of us that are regulars. We also are, you know, interested in hiring contract artists, especially as long as they can do this quality of art. That's we have like we don't compromise on our quality. So we're all about like giving people a first chance. But you know, our bar is really high. We want to be, even though we're a small studio, we want AAA quality. We want AAA scope, even though we're small. So we have to be like super inventive about how to accomplish that.
Speaking of the indie scene, you're one of the growing scene of indie games.
Yes.
Everything is expanding rapidly and stuff. What are your emotions about, like, what are you feeling? Are you excited?
So,
or are you
I'm
scared?
definitely excited because, you know, before, so I worked in Empire Earth and Empires, and, you know, when you work with a publisher, every lesson they've ever learned is in that contract, right? So it's never developer friendly, and it's so different now because we can give gamers something that really the publishers control before. If they say, yeah, I don't want that, you know, that's a difficult thing. Now, there are great things about publishers. I don't mean to insinuate there's not, but there's some cost to it. So the fact that indie games now, you know, this is my own game engine, but things like Unity is a real breakthrough for people to say, like, there's a lot of workflow tools that now invented. I'm doing the same thing, my game engine, C++, and eventually I'm going to do lots of things that require extreme performance, so I want to make sure that I have my workflows, my background's RTS, so eventually our studio will do some story-based RTS games, things like that, as well as lots of adventure games, and so some really innovative titles. We're very dedicated to innovation, so I think a lot of indie games are, you know, but you see a lot of AAA people coming to indie and saying, you only need a couple to do really good quality, so
what are some of the inspirations for the characters?
Sure. So, you know, a lot of what happens in a great story, I think, is that certain things grow organically. They just seem to plug in and make sense. You know, one of the funny things is when we wrote about these characters, we later found out that there was kind of a historical base for them. For example, there is a writer who was a flapper who was like kind of breaking the mold, going around to speakeasies and things and doing things that like most women didn't do back then. They were mostly like stenographers and things like that. So the fact that like, you know, she's the same thing, like no one's giving her a chance, but she's gonna do this dangerous job to kind of prove herself to that she is awesome. So, you know, a lot of the characters kind of grew organically out of it. You know, like I wanted to make a mobster that was somewhat likable, like Vince, you're gonna be that mobster, so you're not like bashing people's skulls in, right? It's not really a graphic game, but you have to, kind of like a thug manager, right? So he's got to like manage a team. And back then, obviously there's some really bad people, but there's a lot of people who are like, you know, real everyday people that were breaking the law and doing things like this that really were not, you know, bad people. So, you know, is the sort of thing you can personify someone easier in the 20s, I think, and still be a good guy, even though you're playing a little bit of a darker line.
Your first whole entire thing knocked out a bunch of possible questions.
Exactly. I was like, I probably knocked down a lot of things. So I can tell you that we're really ambitious, really dedicated to quality and scope. We really need support in Kickstarter. I mean, that's the thing is we asking for $295,000, which is actually, compared to millions that a big budget studio would cost, is very small. We want to make sure that we're honest with the Kickstarter people about how much money we're going to ask for. We're not going to say, oh, I'm going to make all these promises and ask for 50 grand. It'd be really difficult to deliver on the scope that we're promising. So we ask for the true cost what we're going to develop, and even then we're like, don't actually have a studio building and all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty tight even at that, but we're going to put it all into content.
So how much research have you guys put into Kickstarter and everything, and what do you think about it as like?
So that was actually a really stressful process because, like I said, a lot of people are like, you're asking for too much, and it's like a thing. It's like, we're not really. I mean, it's actually a fraction of it's actually going to cost more like $500,000, but we're going to be doing innovations to make sure we bridge that gap. I would rather get no money than to overpromise. So for me, we're going to make the game no matter what. We'll have to reduce the scope if we don't make it. We had to do a lot of research. A lot of research on videos. That's not our strength, right? Our strength is making games. We're not necessarily video people, or for me it was I'm not a sales guy. I want to make this straight up, and it's so we lack skills in PR, marketing, and things like that. But, we have to do our best.
So, any last words you'd like to say?
Supports like Kickstarter, even a $1 donation moves the needle. If we get it on the popular page, I think it'll take off. We're finally getting some press coverage like you. That's just great. So, we're really excited. It's a different game. We're never going to make a clone. We're never going to make something that's an everyday game. It's always going to be something very innovative, very new. Otherwise, you have a finite amount of time in life. Why make a game that's so much like everything else? We got to make something really different.